Welcome everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to install and configure your own DNS resolution server. So as we go through this, there's going to be a whole host of things I talk about. If you want to skip a particular section, maybe you already know how to do this. Maybe you just want to skip to installing and configuring Bind, which is the DNS server software we're going to be using today. You can just skip below. There's going to be some time links in the description of the video. So what I'm going to talk about today is what is DNS, why would I want to run my own DNS resolution server, how to install CentOS, which is a different operating system that I've been using previously for some of these instructional videos. Usually I was using Ubuntu Linux. Today I'm going to use CentOS Linux, which is a Red Hat derivative. It's used a lot in big enterprise environments. So installing CentOS on a VM, installing the Bind DNS server software, and configuring the Bind DNS server software to resolve names and access permissions. So this configuring and setting up the server. We're going to test the DNS server, and then we're going to have a quick talk about how we want to protect this DNS server from public usage. Again, I'm assuming you want to use a DNS server in your own home or business for private resolution. So what exactly is DNS? First thing. So DNS, it's kind of like the internet's version of a phone book. So when you type in www.google.com, it translates google.com into its IP address numbers. It's a lot easier for you to remember google.com than it is to remember 74.32. And a series of numbers for every website you want to go to. So that's essentially what DNS does. So why would you want to run your own DNS server? Well, there's a number of reasons. I'm going to kind of give you a couple demos on these right now. So the first thing is called an ISP transparent proxy. So what this actually does, and this is becoming more common in the ISP industry. You need a little picture here. So this is your computer, right? You're at your laptop. You type in EFF.org, and you have told your system, I don't want to use my ISP's web servers. I want to use another company's web servers, or maybe like OpenDNS or Google DNS. You want to use a third party's DNS web servers. What Transparent Proxy does is your computer using your DNS server says, hey, I want to look up this website and go to it. So it sends out the request right along here. However, in the transmission between your computer and the open internet, you have your ISP. They have a box that says, hey, I recognize somebody's trying to use DNS lookup. I'm not going to send this over to this DNS server here that they've selected. I'm going to send this to my own DNS server and then send the result back to them. So in essence, they're intercepting your proxy. They're intercepting your DNS request and using their own server instead of the server you specify, which is kind of pretty shady in my opinion. Hey, if you want to use a third-party DNS server, that should be up to you. You shouldn't have your DNS attempts proxied or captured off without your knowledge or consent. So that's one item here. It's my ISP does not do this, so I can't give you a live demo of this happening, but it is becoming more and more common, and many people may run into this type of issue. The second thing you're going to run into is when a ISP resolves non-existent domains. So usually what would happen, right, is this. So say I open up a browser and we type in blah blah blah.com. It doesn't exist. That's just, I pounded on the keyboard and that's what came out, right? It's going to say, error, we can't find this server. It does not exist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this URL just to make sure that you can see we're using the same one. I'm going to go to a command prompt video. The command prompt window. So the NS lookup tool, what it will do is allow you to query DNS servers, right? So right now I'm using this as my DNS server. I'm actually running a private DNS server already. So you can see that's the address it's going to run. If I type in that address says, hey, I can't find this domain. It doesn't exist, right? It's unknown. However, if I switch to my ISP's DNS servers, and you can do it inside NSLookup by typing server and the IP address of the DNS server you want to use. So now it's using this server for any queries I send it. If I paste that same domain in, hey look, it gives me an IP address back. So what it's essentially doing is it's interfering or modifying the true results of a DNS query, which I don't really like. If a server doesn't exist, I want to be told, the server doesn't exist. So why did they do this? Why would they want to return IP addresses for servers that don't exist? Well, we'll show you that. So we're going to copy this IP address, and we're going to open this page up. And we'll also copy this address, right, that I typed. So you type in this page up, this is what comes up, like a search box. And generally what would be there is the domain. So what it's going to do is essentially going to say, hey, here's some results that resembled what you were looking for. Obviously, this is just pounded on keyboard, so we can't really find anything. But say you mistyped the domain by one letter, right? And typically on these things, so they partner with Yahoo, so they get some revenue for sending people to the page when they mistype URLs. The ISP does. Also, there's generally some ads on here. I have ad block on, so it is actually blocking the ads that would be on the screen, so they can get some ad revenue as well. So essentially, they're making money off of DNS inquiry, which I kind of personally disagree with out of my own principles. So that's another thing that ISPs will do. It's another reason you may want to block this. You don't want your DNS traffic messed with. I mean, they're filtering and changing your DNS queries. So another thing they can do with it, which I don't have a problem with this with my ISP or in my country, is censoring. So say you type in www.websiteIwanttogoto.com, and your government or your ISP or whatnot has decided we don't want you visiting that. They can return invalid entries. So they can say, oh, we can't find the server even though it's there. If you're running your own DNS server, they don't have any control about what it looks up. So it's an anti-censorship item. Also tracking. So when you type in websites and you're sending DNS queries to their DNS server, they can see exactly where you're going. They know every website you're looking up and going to. So those are some of the reasons why you would run your own DNS resolver, right? So something that changes DNS or host names or like www addresses into their IP address. This is why you want to run your own. So let's talk about installing CentOS, right? This is what we're going to be using here. And we'll leave this window open for now. We'll just pull it off to the side because we may need that in a little bit. So we're going to talk about installing CentOS. So at this point, if you already have an up and running CentOS installation, VM, machine, whatever you want to use, you might want to skip right to this. I'm going to be using CentOS 6.5 64-bit today. So I'm using ESXi, so I'm going to make a new machine. So I'm going to call it bind demo because we're just doing a demo today. So I'll put it on my SSD, hopefully make this a little quicker. And since CentOS is a derivative of Red Hat Linux, I'm going to be choosing Red Hat Linux 6, or you can even do CentOS, right? So I'll actually do CentOS 64-bit, which is what it is. We need one network adapter, that's fine. I only need 4 gigs of space, don't need much space at all. And we're going to edit the settings. I'm going to go right down to the minimum RAM. So CentOS requires a minimum of 512 megs of RAM. That's what I'm going to use. So let's see. And I also want to make sure that I open up my ISO image of CentOS for installing this. And double click, I guess not. Where's CentOS? There you go. And change this over. Connect and power on so it boots up. Alright, so I've got a dummy machine made. We're going to walk through installing CentOS. So we'll get the console open for this program here. So CentOS, there we go. So we're going to install or upgrade CentOS. So we'll give us some time to do this as I go through. So as mentioned, CentOS, it's a Red Hat derivative. It's used quite a bit in the enterprise or server environment for large corporations, businesses. If you're looking to be some type of Linux administrator, it is the system that you'd really want to learn of all Linux systems. So it's most commonly one beside as well as Red Hat. So we're going to go through the installation. We're just going to basically do a quick basic install. Yep, welcome. Okay. Okay. So reinitialize all. Yep, looks good. We're just going to do password at test. This is a test machine. I'm not going to keep this. Never mind. It must be 6 characters long. All right. Great. Yeah, we're going to use it anyways. It's fine. Just to make sure. It's just a test system. Obviously, if you're setting up your own box, you may want to use your own secure passwords and whatnot. But in this case, since this is just a demo, I really don't care. I'm going to delete this after I get it installed and running and show you how to use this. So as we go through here, it's going to install the CentOS operating system. Now, when you get the system running, it's just going to be a command line. It's like a DOS box, but it's actually an operating system running, of course. So everything we're going to be doing is through a text interface, which hopefully you guys can use. I'll show you how to use Vi and a couple other little programs that we use in editing. Some people like Nano. Nano is probably a little nicer, but I'm used to Vi, so I just use Vi for editing text files. What I'm talking about is text editors, different programs used to edit configuration files and so forth on a Linux machine through a text interface. So this thing is going to continue installing. Hopefully it wraps up here shortly. I would like to actually get into installing Bind with you and showing you how to do that. So one of the things we want to think about while we're waiting for this to install is the fact that CentOS is a little different than Windows or other distributions in Linux. When it comes out of the box, it does not have an Ethernet card enabled. So if you try to install the software and get it in IP address on your local network or network, it is not going to pull an IP address. So we're going to look at that and show you how to get the network running as well. So I'm going to assume that you already have a working CentOS install running for configuring and installing this bind server if you're just going to skip ahead. So looks like it should be completed here shortly. Go back to this window. Please finish up. It's always the hardest to fill this dead air time when we're looking at items. So DNS as well. You can also use DNS servers to do things like host your own domain. So if you want to have your own domain hosted, you can do that. However, we're not going to dive into that today. That's like if you want to host your own domain service like www.myserver.com, right? It looks like it's completed. Great. So we're going to reboot. So we're not going to, again, as mentioned, we're not going to look at those DNS items other than simply installing and configuring a resolver. Okay, so after this is done, what's going to happen is your system's going to come up. It's going to prompt you to log into it, right? It's going to say, hey, log into your Linux. As you see, CentOS 6.5. All right, so it's ready. It's running. So we're going to log in as root, and we're going to log in. So we're into our system now. It's up and running. This is what you would expect to see, right? So, as mentioned, the first thing we're going to have to do after installing CentOS is enable the network card. Again, it's not mentioned by default. So if you type in ifconfig, you're going to see all there is a LO or local loopback up and running, right? If you noticed, when I set up the VM, I did specify that we would have one Ethernet controller. So where is that, the configuration? So in this machine, or sorry, in CentOS, if you go to the etc folder, right, then we go to sysconfig. You can do these multiple paths. I'm just doing one at a time. I can do the whole path at once. And that's also going to be in network scripts. And if we do an ls, you're going to see a configuration file here for ifconfig eth0. So it's the interface configuration for the Ethernet 0. And obviously you have local, you're going to have, different items in here, IPv6 and so forth. But we're concerned with the ifconfig eth0. I wonder if this system has nano. We're going to type in nano. We're going to try it. ifcfg dash nano is not there. So we're just going to use vi, like I mentioned. So it's going to be vi space and then the file name. So what we're going to do is enable or make a couple changes here, right? So to use vi, you put your cursor where you want to have it, and on the right above the arrow keys in your keyboard, there's something called insert. You hit that, and that puts it like into edit mode. You can see at the bottom it says insert down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete out on boot. So what on boot is telling you is when the computer turns on, is this device enabled? By default, it's no. We're going to say yes. We want the Ethernet card to be turned on when it's enabled. The other item we want to change is NM controlled. So there's a system that actually will control your Ethernet devices. By just setting this to no, it's saying, hey, I'm manually configuring this, and I don't need you to do anything for me. I don't need you to try to be a wizard to control my network device. So once that's done, we have to get out of this insert mode. We do that by hitting the escape key on the keyboard, and you'll see the insert went away. And then what we want to do is just type in a colon and a W, which saves the file, and then a colon and a Q, and that quits out. So we're back to this. We're back into the Linux command prompt. So we've basically set up the device. By the way, I'll go back into it really quick. Boot proto is DHCP. I can be pulling a DHCP address. You also can edit this file to assign a static IP if you wanted to assign a static IP to your server just manually. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just let it pull a DHCP IP and be done with it. So at this point, we've configured the device. Let's enable it. So if you do if up or interface up to turn something on, and it's going to be ETH0. We're going to turn on the Ethernet address, right? Or Ethernet interface, I should say. And then now if you do an ifconfig, hey, there we go. So now we have an IP address of 192.168.1.139. And if I ping, I forgot I don't have my unlocks on. There we go. I can ping my gateway, so I can ping my router in my home. All right. So looks good, right? That looks great. So next up, what we're going to do is we are going to do a couple. You would do a couple things. Generally, you would update the system to the newest version of the software. I'm not going to do that today. You would do that by typing yum update -y. What that's going to do is upgrade all the packages in the system and so forth. But we're not going to do that today. We're just going to run with what we have here. So, and that takes a while. It'll probably take 15-20 minutes to complete. So that's the reason I'm not going to do it, just for demo purposes. But if you're running your own server and setting up, I would recommend you run that. Okay, so we're going to type in yum. We're going to type in install, which is to install some software. Yum is kind of like apt-get for Ubuntu or Debian-based installations. It's just their software manager, so it's called yum. So we're going to install. We're going to install bind, which is the DNS server we're going to be using today, and then also bind utils. And -y means this yes after all the prompts. Instead of getting prompted, it's this automatic yes. So it's going to download and install bind software packages. So it's going through, and it is complete. So what we want to do is we're going to have to, so the software is running. It's already running on the machine right now, which is great. So but we need to configure the software. We may make some changes to configuration files. So in CentOS, it's in cd/etc is where the configuration file is. And the there's obviously a lot of files in here, right? There's a whole bunch of items in here. The item we're looking for is namedconf. So it's vi named dot. Named is its name domain. Name daemon or daemon. So it's basically the server process for CentOS Linux. It's called named. For whatever reason, they didn't call it bind.conf. It's named.conf because it's a name server. So namedaemon.conf. So we're going to open this up. So we need to make a couple changes here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add in some listen addresses. So this is basically what this bind server is listening on. It's listening on the local loopback, but it's not listening on any of the interfaces. So the easiest way is just to do your whole IP scope. I use 192.168.1.x, those IP scopes internally for my home network, at least for this segment of the LAN. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch to insert again, and we're going to type in 192.168.1.1 a slash and then 24 and then another semicolon after that. So that's what we're going to type in here. And so what it's telling this is, hey, I want to listen on the Ethernet interface as well, and any IP address from 192.168.1.1 through 192.168.1.255, I want to listen on any of those IP addresses if I have that, which it has the 139 address, if you remember looking at that. So essentially, instead of having to define it, it just, obviously DHCP could potentially change this address unless you reserve it in your router. But that's why you generally tend to configure it this way. You could also use 192.168.1.139, which is the IP I have, which should be fine as well. So it's the IP address assigned to the machine. So allow query, it's only allowing the current computer to query itself to look up host names. This is going to be behind a firewall. So I'm going to change this to any. So any machine that tries to connect to it can query it. Another way to do it, which actually we'll do for this purposes, we can do your same, host address as above. So we can do that, right? We can use that as the host scope. So any address in that IP range can query the server. If you're outside of that range, say somebody tried to access it from the internet with their public IP of like 12.3.9.52, it's not saying, hey, you're not within my allowed block. So if you have it set to any, it'll let anybody do it. If you have just a scope, it'll just allow a certain set of IP addresses to do it. So again, we're going to exit out or escape out, type in W to write it, and Q to quit. So that's it. So we've changed the configuration for the DNS server. So now next thing we're going to want to do, we're going to want to restart the server so it uses our new configuration. So we're going to type in service named and then restart. There we go. So it's restarted. It stopped it, generated the key, and restarted the named server. So it's running again with our new configuration file. One final thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to type in chk config, if I can type. So check config named, which is the host process name, and then on. So what that does is it tells the server every time I reboot, start named by default. If you don't have that turned on and you restart the server, this DNS server is not going to be running. You have to come in and start it again. By typing check config space named space on, it tells CentOS that every time I start this process, start this program up. So now it'll run by default. So great, let's give it a try, right? Let's give this a try. Spoiler, there's one more thing we got to do. But you're thinking, oh, I have all the access rules set up. Why isn't this, let's give it a go. So, as you remember, the IP address we have is 192.168.139. So say server 192.168.1.139. Hey, looks good, right? It says there. And let's look up let's look up Google.com. So it's trying. Oh, it timed out. It didn't go through. What's going on here? Right? So you figure, boy, I configured it. I allowed it. Why isn't this working? So CentOS by default, and as a good practice, has something called IP tables running. It's a firewall. So what we need to do is we need to make a firewall rule to allow us to send DNS queries to the server. One way you can do is just disabling the firewall, which I don't recommend. That would actually open it up. The other thing you can do is you can just add a new firewall rule. So it's called IP tables. So -L lists the firewall rules. So you can see, essentially when something comes in, which is, the server is getting input, something's coming into it. Your request in this case is coming in. It says, well, is it already established? Nope, it's a new connection. So it's going to say, it doesn't fall under that rule. Is it ICMP? Nope. It's all traffic, anywhere. So it's actually not going to go under that. And essentially, it's going to reject everything, right? It's going to reject by default that you can connect. So we're going to add a new rule to allow us in. So we're going to type in IP tables. No, I don't want to do that. Let's type in IP tables -I, then input in caps. So we're going to add a new input rule. We're going to insert a new input rule. We're going to do P for protocol, and we're going to do UDP, and then dport 53, because that's the port that DNS runs on, is port 53, J, and accept. So what this says essentially is IP tables, I want to insert or add a new input rule. The rule will be for protocol UDP on port 53, and when that comes in, I want to go right to accept or jump to accepting it. So we'll add that in. Now let's give it a try over here, right? Let's see what happens. Google.com. Hey, look, it returned the result. So essentially, the only thing is you have to keep in mind is with CentOS, anytime you make a new rule, or with Linux in general, you might have to add firewall rules to allow that traffic through. But hey, it looked up Google.com, right? So there you go. You saw it resolve Google.com. That is the server it's using. So it's using 192.168.139. How about ABC.com, right? Look up ABC.com. Hey, there you go. We looked it up. That's the address. So if we let's take one of these addresses for Google. If we grab this address, we'll pull up our handy dandy Chrome window. We type it in. Hey, look, there it is, Google. So our DNS server is now resolving host names. So one final thing we'd want to do is we want to make sure that we save these firewall rules. IP tables by default, if you don't save the rules, what will happen is every time it reboots, the rules will be reset, and then that would prevent your server from working. So we're going to type in service, IP tables, and then save. And you'll say, hey, it saved the firewall rules. So now what happens is if we reboot this machine, all the rules are should stay in place. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to reboot the machine. So I'm going to type in reboot. And there we go. So this system is rebooting right now. So we'll give it a bit of time to do that. Once it's rebooted, we're just going to test it, make sure it works. We're going to run back over here because right now it's, not working. So that's the address it had, 139. So as you see, the system's booting up. It didn't resolve a host name, saying its host is unreachable. Host is unreachable. Hey, look at that. I'm getting ping replies back. So it wants me to log in. We're just going to try to resolve a host name again. Let's say CNN.com. And there we go, CNN resolved. So essentially now we have a working, running DNS resolver. That's really all there is to getting a bind DNS server, up and running on your system here, right, on your computer or your VM machine or however you want to do this. You could run this in something like VirtualBox or VMware Player. You could run it there as well. So keep that in mind. So that's how we configure it and test it and make sure it's working. So one thing I want to mention really quick just to wrap it up is to talk about a quick note about protecting your DNS server. You want to make sure that your DNS server cannot be accessed from people you don't want to access it. It can be used in something called the DNS amplification attack, etc. And that's one of the reasons why you configure some of those access rules. But I would highly recommend that unless you know what you're doing, you don't put this publicly facing on the internet. So right now it's behind my firewall and router. So if you try to type in my IP address and go to port 53, it's not going to work. There's no port forwarding set up. So that's an item to mention, that unless you know what you're doing, you don't want to put this on a actual public internet facing connection. So I hope that gives you guys some good insight on setting up and how to configure and install a Bind DNS server. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please leave comments, criticisms, as long as they're constructive, below. I hope this is helpful for everybody. Thanks for watching and have a great day.